This is the Right Guys podcast, where we bring people together by building walls. And now your hosts, Josh Hammerling and Max McGuire.
Welcome back. Another edition of the Right Guys podcast. Rounding out the week. Lots going on, Josh. We're talking about what we want covered for today.
Yeah.
We start talking about the border wall and the absolute lunacy of Biden making the biggest flip ever from saying it's racist to even contemplate building a barrier, but now basically bypassing 26 different laws, which, by the way, when Donald Trump did this, he faced lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit in court from every single issue organization.
Yeah.
Not Biden, though. Biden, it's different.
Why is it different?
Well, it's because he's got a D next to his name. That makes it different.
Oh, so the R is a big deal.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
Yeah. D stands for different.
Okay. I just want to thank him for not making me racist anymore, because if they want it and I want it, then it's not racist, right? Not anymore.
Yeah. I don't know.
That's where
I'm going to see if I found a meme. Why don't you talk a little bit about what you pulled?
All right. So if you didn't know, a lot of people, as we go back many, many, many years, have always said, I'm against the wall. And by many years, I mean 2015, 2008, somewhere in there. But most Democrats were always for it before they were against it. For it before they were against it. And I've had a lot of Dem friends be like, well, that's a bunch of crap. They've never stood for it. But, here it is.
Yeah.
Or at least I'm trying to get it up there. There we go.
This is just one more example of
something
that is not thought through and is primarily put forward for political consumption.
This is from the Washington
The bill before us will certainly do some good. It will authorize some badly needed funding for better fences and better security along our borders.
The fence is now basically complete. Maybe they'll need a moat. Maybe they want alligators in the moat.
Secure our borders with technology, personnel,
Hillary back in the day?
physical barriers if necessary in some places.
We will not build a wall. Instead, we will build an economy where everyone who wants a good job can get one.
I voted for a fence. I voted unlike most Democrats, and some of you won't like it. I voted for 700-mile fence. And let me tell you something, folks. People are driving across that border with tons of everything from byproducts from methamphetamine to cocaine to heroin. It's all coming up through corrupt Mexico.
And the impulse is to hunker down, shut the gates, build walls, exit at this moment. Is precisely the wrong answer.
Former presidents have said to him that they wish that they had built a wall. Do you recall President Obama ever saying that?
Come on.
Construction of a 630-mile border fence create a significant barrier to illegal immigration on our southern land border.
All along, the president's saying, well, I'll do DACA and Dreamers in return for the wall. He's got it. President Trump, if you want to open the government, you must abandon the wall.
And I was looking to do it like a supercut, but they beat me to it.
Yeah, Washington Post.
The music? And this is the Washington Post, man. Think about that. Right?
Missing from that was Dianne Feinstein, who not only was once for a wall, she also was vehemently against birthright citizenship and anchor babies. They've been on the other side of all of these issues, right? Other side of all these issues. But I wanted to mention, because you have Biden and Obama in that both saying that the wall is already built and that they'd already approved 700 miles of border wall. Yeah. I wanted to show everyone just what that means. Which, by the way, this is the meme I was talking about. It's racist when Trump does it. It's not racist when Biden does it. But when they're talking about that fencing, what they don't tell you is that not all border walls, border fencing is created equal. Some of it in like the high pedestrian areas, especially near like the major ports of entry, those had pedestrian fencing. 10, 16, 18 foot tall fencing, barbed wire on top to stop people from entering. But eventually, if you walk far enough in either direction, eventually you get to a place where the border wall, the pedestrian wall, ends. And what you see is something like this. This technically qualifies as fencing, but this is what's called vehicle barriers. So they take telephone poles, bollards, drive them into the earth, and then they connect them with a piece of metal to stop vehicles from driving in. But Josh, a toddler can crawl across that border.
Oh,
and yet,
right.
On paper, that qualifies as there's a fence there.
You bet. So he voted for a fence that you can walk right past and through. So,
and here's an example from before Trump took office. Pedestrian fencing literally ends, and then it transitions to vehicle fencing.
Mm-hmm.
So both of those areas still count as fencing. So when you hear Biden say, oh, we have 700 miles of fencing, what he doesn't tell you is miles and miles, hundreds of miles of that includes just the vehicle barrier, which a toddler can crawl through, anyone can crawl through. That's not secure. That's not secure in any way, shape, or form. So Donald Trump gets a lot of grief because he didn't build enough new wall.
Mm-hmm.
So new wall is defined as areas that had no fencing whatsoever and got new fencing. When you hear people like Chris Christie on the debate stage saying Donald Trump had barely any new wall segments, that's a talking point deliberately crafted to not give Trump credit for taking the hundreds of miles of fencing that was like this with the vehicle barriers and turning that into actual pedestrian fencing. That on paper was an upgrade, but that didn't count as new wall construction. So they say, oh, we only did 60, 70, however many some odd miles of new border wall, completely discrediting the fact that hundreds of miles of the fencing that looked like this was extended to make sure that pedestrians couldn't just leapfrog over it.
That's the point of it. It's just ridiculous, man. All it is, it just becomes a talking point. I voted for this, and I was for that, and I'm for this, and I'm for that. It just shows you that they have no like real constitution for this kind of stuff, right? They don't hold any promises. They're just there in the political moment to try to make themselves look good. That's the whole point of it all. The Democratic Party is just about having a big curtain on the front where it looks like somebody's running things, but behind the scenes, it's just this machine of whatever works at the moment. Yeah. It's gross, man.
The only reason
people vote for it.
Yeah. The only reason that they're now restarting wall construction, which, by the way, just a couple of weeks ago, DHS was auctioning off border wall materials.
Yeah.
So they had whole store yards full of border wall fencing that Trump had never gotten a chance to install. They were literally auctioning it off as scrap metal, pennies on the dollar. And now they're turning around, they're going to rebuy all of that material at marked up prices, right?
Probably from the same people that sold it too.
Yeah, probably. And here's the thing. The only reason they're doing this is because it's now started to impact their Democrat voters. They didn't care when Texas was overrun. They didn't care when Arizona or New Mexico or Southern California was overrun. Now that it's hitting New York, Chicago, Massachusetts, now they're starting to care about it. And there's something I want to put this up because just to show you how far this border crisis is reaching. The Army-Navy game is apparently it's supposed to be played at, I think, Foxborough, Gillette Stadium. Mm-hmm. And they can't actually get their players and the staff and the guests, the people who want to go see it, they can't actually get hotel rooms because all those hotel rooms are being filled up with they say migrants. They're illegal aliens gaming the system. So people are booking trips, have trips long booked in to see the Army-Navy game in Massachusetts, and they're having their reservations canceled.
Well, they could just sleep on the streets. I mean, that's the easiest thing to do. I mean, they should have brought their own tents. You know, you can put a little tent area right in front of the stadium, maybe with these little signs that says, you know, hotel rooms for people that pay. Maybe, you know, protest that, right? And, you know,
have you ever been to Gillette?
I have not, and that's on my list to visit.
It's a beautiful complex.
I bet
I went there for a wedding last year.
Really?
Stayed in the hotel. The wedding was off property, but stayed in the hotel there. Beautiful property. They've built it up. There's like a Bass Pro Shop. There's all restaurants and bars. And then there's these hotels that literally overlook the stadium. And the whole point of it is you go there for a game, look out your window, and the stadium's right there.
Yeah.
Right. Those hotels are being filled with illegal aliens.
It's affecting the fan base. Think about it. Are they going to make as much money as they would if they had sold all those spaces to people who were there to vacation? Right. I mean, imagine the people that now cannot enjoy their vacation. Right.
They are expensive hotels. They are
not
cheap.
Right.
They are not cheap. So for those hotels to willingly accept these reservations, they're getting paid a ton. And Foxborough is kind of in the middle of nowhere. Like, if you're in the country illegally and you don't have a work permit, the last place I would put them would be Foxborough, because there's nothing for them to do. They're just going to sit there. They can't work. I mean, legally at least. Like, what's the point of sending them there? It makes no sense. But yet, that's what they're doing. And now it's disrupting and ruining the Army-Navy game, because there's so many of these illegal aliens being put up in hotels that the players, coaches, staff, and bystanders, viewers, people going to see the game, can't find anywhere to stay.
Yeah.
It's just crazy. That is why they're building the border wall. Not because they have a problem with the sheer volume they're coming across. If they could have done a better job hiding those migrants and making them not reach blue cities and blue states, they'd be more than happy to let this keep happening. But it's because it started to affect the lives of limousine liberals in these blue cities and blue states. That is why they're doing this. So, listen, a broken clock can be right twice a day, and we can be glad that a border wall is being built, but we cannot let them claim victory on this, because they would just be claiming victory over a crisis of their own making.
It sounds.
Oh, so I broke it,
that movement,
but then I kind of fixed it.
Yeah, and now
I deserve a pat on the back.
And it's better, and we did a good job. Vote for me. It just blows me away, Max. I mean, are they really going to build a good wall? I mean, what are they going to say? What is going to be their version of a wall, too? Right?
It's going to be back to what I just showed you.
Yeah,
it's going to be back to this. They're going to say, "Oh,
probably,
we built the wall.
Right, we built the wall, and now you can't climb over it, but your dogs and your family can just go right underneath it. You can't climb over it, but you can certainly go underneath it. And that's what we'll get. I mean, and if they're they're using this crisis to their advantage. I mean, to their political advantage, they really are. Look how we're fixing a mess, and this has always been a problem in the U.S. So we're going to fix it right before an election, where we know after polling, people are saying that the border is their most important issue, right?
Yeah. And remember,
political spin.
Border wall construction means absolutely nothing if they are still keeping the floodgates welded open. Like, just imagine this. Imagine it. Like, you see weather on the Doppler, you send someone out to open them if you absolutely have to open floodgates, right? But leaving them open for months and months and months on end, what's the point of building new wall if every illegal alien knows they can just waltz right in here? Right? What's the point?
It's only a problem when it reaches Connecticut and it reaches Massachusetts and it starts reaching the coast. When it starts, when it leaves Middle America and starts making its way out, then it's a real problem.
Then it is.
New Jersey. I mean, imagine what those cities are going to look like.
Oh, no, I know what they look like. I used to live in New Jersey. I went to school in a town that is probably at this point more than majority illegal alien. I went to a school, just happened to be in a town that was a huge hub for illegal aliens. And it wasn't as bad then as it is now. But I was talking to family, and they went to go to church there. And like church for Easter Sunday was just a madhouse, because there's just so many illegal alien, obviously Catholics, great for that, but hundreds more people trying to go to church than they have space in the pews, right? It's just completely overrun.
Yeah. And Gillette Stadium's going to lose a lot of money if people don't show up to those off games that aren't the Patriots, right? I mean, imagine it's going to, somebody's pocketbook's getting hit on this. And if it's the big boys who pay the big taxes,
it's the bars and the restaurants.
It's
the bars and the restaurants. Like, so it's kind of like that. Was it 16th Street? What's the street in Denver?
16th Street Mall, or even Pearl Street up in Boulder too. Yeah.
Yeah, it feels like that when you go there, because it's you walk out of your hotels and you're on this little promenade, and it's just a whole street of just like a Vineyard Vines shop. Like you really think these illegal aliens are gonna hop out of their hotel room and go shop at Vineyard Vines? Like, come on.
What are they decorating? Right? Yeah. They don't have any money.
Craft beer bars, right? Craft whiskey bars, all up and down this stretch, and realize that their entire business model is based on the idea that people will show up for a game and they'll go to that bar and they don't have to worry about driving drunk because they can just stumble back into the hotel and call it a night, right?
Absolutely.
As soon as the guests have to start staying 5-10 miles away, they can't stay there they can't go to the bar until last call, right?
Nope.
They're not going to be able to get there in time necessarily for tailgating. It's going to destroy it, completely destroy it. And it doesn't take a whole lot of these rooms to be filled by illegal aliens for these bars to start seeing it affect their bottom line. It doesn't take a whole lot.
Probably already happening. Yeah. Nobody can see it's already affecting taxes. You're not going to feel a lot of this pinch until next year, right? Because the budgets for this year have already been made. It'll be 12 months down the road, right? And 12 months from there, what is that going to look like when there's even less and less revenue? I mean, it's eating out the inside of the city like a rot. I mean, I hate to say that because these are people, but that's what it does.
Oh yeah,
it brings with it so much decay, societal decay.
We're already starting to see the police blotters of these people getting caught shoplifting 3-4 times, right? It's a revolving door. But what else do? They've come here illegally. They have no real job prospects. They have no real skills. And that's not an insult. I'm not insulting them, right? But if you come from a village in Honduras and your whole life is just you're a villager and you work on a farm or whatever, right? You make it to the Big Apple. One, you have no work permit, so you can't legally work here. So everything you do to survive is either charity or a crime.
Yeah.
Right? So what else do you do? Of course they're going to shoplift. I don't blame them on a personal level. But
you need stuff.
But we're encouraging it. We're telling them to come here. We're telling them to come here knowing that once they get here, they have no prospects whatsoever. And then we act shocked and surprised when they start robbing people or stealing stuff. I don't know. It's a mess. And the only reason they're building building a border wall is because they're starting to feel the hurt. It's NIMBYism, not in my backyard, at its absolute finest. Yeah. Well, we'll keep covering the border issue as it gets worse, because it's going to get much worse before it can even hope to get better. But I wanted to spend the brunt of today talking about this news story coming out of Newsweek. Headline exclusive, Donald Trump followers targeted by FBI as 2024 election nears.
Ouch.
The FBI is going away from looking for Islamic terrorism, radical Islamic extremism, and they are now focusing primarily on what they have branded as agave. AGAAVE.
Like the cactus for tequila?
It stands for anti-government, anti-authority, violent extremism.
They love their acronyms, don't they?
Yes.
Wow, that's a tongue twister. Why is that one so long?
I don't know. Does not include Antifa, by the way, because Antifa isn't real, Josh. Just remember that. Antifa isn't real. It's just an idea.
Okay.
It's just an idea.
Okay.
Antifa's not real.
But what about... Okay, but don't they have organizers and people that participate?
I'm going to say that issue was... people know I had to give a deposition for Eric Coomer's lawsuit against Mike Lindell. And that question that they asked me was my favorite question out of all of them. Because they were holding the position that Antifa's not real.
Yeah. Right?
And it was very fun because I got to give a similar kind of answer to what I give on this show all the time. Right? Yeah. Like, if Antifa isn't a group, how does everyone show up wearing the same color clothing, carrying the same signs, shouting the same slogans, and using the same kinds of weapons, all at the right date, place, and time. Right? Yeah. So it's either the biggest coincidence that's ever happened on planet Earth, or there's an organizational structure. And just because there isn't a top-down, like, grand poobah of the Antifa League or whatever calling the shots, doesn't mean that there isn't an organizational structure. That I love it when the left claims that, because you have to really suspend your disbelief completely to argue that this is just a spontaneous eruption of identical feelings and identical hatreds. And we know, Josh, you've seen it in Denver. There are flyers out telling people this is when we're going to go. Bring your cans of soup to throw at people, right? And we've seen so names because they don't like it when they get called out, but we've seen very prominent reporters in the Denver area, Colorado Springs area, claim for months and months they have nothing to do with Antifa and Antifa isn't real. And then it comes out that they're actually in charge of managing the social media. If you manage social media, there's an organizational structure. You're telling people when and where to go fight the other side. There's organization. Right? I mean, like,
absolutely.
Come on.
Okay, well, on the flip side, is Agave got a leader? I mean, it seems leaderless to me. And if it doesn't have leader and it doesn't have organization, how can it be like a terrorist group? How is it a problem? I don't see people getting together for it.
We're gonna have to come up with a different acronym. I just finished my latest round of antibiotics for my sickness, and every time you say agave, it makes me want a margarita. So we got to figure out another acronym.
Right. I'm going with agave. I like it.
Fine, agave. Okay. No, these are. Listen, there are lots of liberals that over the years could be classified as agave, anti-government, anti-authoritarianism, violent extremists. I mean. Just look at all these liberal terrorist groups that have bombed the Capitol, or like the Weather Underground.
Yeah, they were the classic.
They went from being a violent extremist group to being part of Barack Obama's unofficial advisor group, right? With the Bill Ayers people.
I remember. Oh my God.
So there are people in positions of power that quite literally got there through violent extremism, anti-government, anti-authority. Meanwhile, conservatives say, hey, we don't like this. We don't think that this is fair. We don't like that you're throwing grandmothers in prison because they walked into the Capitol building looking for a bathroom and the police officers were holding the door and waving them in. That happened. Like there are people that stormed the Capitol building on January 6th and committed very obvious crimes. But there were also people that walked in because they had to use the bathroom. They were looking for a water fountain. And when they get to the doors, they're being held open by police officers who are waving them in.
Yeah.
To argue that they were trespassing is ludicrous when the police officer's holding open the door, waving them in. There's no reasonable expectation that those people, especially towards the end, would have known that the only reason the doors were open is because they were forced open. And if that's what they're claiming, right? So you're not anti-government, anti-authority, violent extremists to look at these sets of circumstances and realize that it's bullshit for for someone who walked into the Capitol looking for a bathroom to get the book thrown at them, but for two literal lawyers to firebomb a police car in New York City and get leniency. I'm gonna see if I can pull that up, because you remember that, Josh, when those two lawyers firebombed a car?
Was that Washington? Was that during the Summer of Love?
Oh, it had to be.
Yeah. I mean, we were kind of talking about this back in the old show, and like I remember coming. If we committed that sort of crime, they would have gone after our dead relatives, right?
Here we go. 1 year, 1 day in prison for a lawyer that firebombed a New York Police Department vehicle. This was a lawyer. This wasn't a thug who didn't know it was wrong. Literal lawyer. He's getting 1 year and a day. Meanwhile, you have people who just walked into the Capitol building to see what's going on, getting much longer prison sentences.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, like some are getting 7 and 15 years.
Some of them are still in jail.
Yeah.
Not even getting their day in court yet.
Right. Being held as political prisoners.
Yes. But no, you can firebomb a police vehicle during a literal riot, and you get less prison time.
Yeah.
I'm not a violent extremist. I'm not a violent extremist to recognize this is bullshit.
Yeah. It's a two-tier justice. I mean, it's that two-tier justice system. If you're on one side, you don't get prosecuted. If you're on the other, they go after you. I mean, it goes totally in the face of what his face has been saying all this time. You know, we're not a two-tiered system. Yes, we are.
I am not a violent extremist if I recognize the lunacy of Comey walking out in front of the cameras and telling the American people we've reviewed Hillary Clinton's actions, and even though they violate the law as written, no reasonable prosecutor would charge someone with a felony during an election season. So therefore, we've declined to press charges. Fast forward 4 or 5 years, here we have a county prosecutor in Georgia trying to put Trump in prison for the rest of his life for disagreeing with election results? Or New York throwing him in prison because he signed a check to reimburse a lawyer? Or special counsel throw him in prison because when he left the White House, he had in his possession his documents just like every other president? But no, they were classified. Just like every other president. Just like Joe Biden, they found classified documents in Joe Biden's garage.
Next to the Corvette.
Garage, not behind a locked safe door, but hidden behind a garage door that was often open and it had single pane glass windows. A Sawzall could have gotten in there.
Bird flies too hard, it breaks the window.
Yeah,
you know?
The neighborhood kid could have hit a baseball into the garage, gone to chase it, and found our nuclear secrets or something. You know what I mean? Like
something crazy, right? I just don't know where to go with it. I mean, you got to remember that Hillary Clinton at the time was Secretary of State, and President Trump was president, right? There's that immunity as president that you get because if everybody disagreed with some of the stuff you did, you could be held liable all the time if you didn't have that immunity, or at least some degree of immunity, right? And they're just clearly going after the political opponents when it's convenient, right? Yeah. And then they can twist the truth to make sure they get the justification. They get that false moral high ground to say, you know, we were right to begin with, but you guys have clearly fallen so far away. We have to prosecute you, and you're terrorists now. Yeah, right? You're all part of a group that is violent and extreme because you do not fit our norm.
I was looking at it. Absolutely right. I was looking at the new accusations being made against Trump. And one of the new accusations is he had in his possession classified documents that he had written notes on the back of them. So these are documents that are technically classified. Everything pretty much that goes across the president's desk dealing with anything related to national security is classified, even if it really shouldn't be. It just is, just to be safe. So if Donald Trump turns it over and writes a note, guess what? That's a presidential note. He has every right to have that document for his memoirs, right? If the government really needs that document, then the government can show up with a scanner and copy it if there isn't already another copy. And that's the other side of this, right? Every document he had in his possession, there were other copies in the government's possession, right? This wasn't like we need these documents, otherwise we can't function as a nation. These were just them saying Donald Trump shouldn't be allowed to have them, even though Barack Obama had them, Bill Clinton had them, George W. Bush had them, Ronald Reagan had them, George H.W. Bush had them. Every president that has ever left the White House and taken his notes and his papers with him for memoirs had classified documents.
Absolutely.
Period. It's
what
just,
they do.
Yeah. And in the past, when Hillary Clinton mishandled classified documents, even though the law didn't say she could take them, the result was, oh no reasonable prosecutor would ever bring charges against a Democrat frontrunner during an election year. Meanwhile, Donald Trump is taking shots from everywhere. They want to throw him in prison for millennia at this point.
Right.
If every charge actually went through, you'd be looking at combined sentences over a millennia. Think about that.
It's just ridiculous. It pisses me off. And these are over documents, like hard documents, right? That are really hard to get unless you go and physically take them, right? Remember, she had a home-baked server that was broadcasting to what? Doing what? We don't know because the hard drives were all destroyed, right? As far as we know. I'm sure the NSA might know something.
They took they took hammers to their phones. We know that.
So she's got this thing that was constantly being that thing can be hacked, right? If it's connected to the internet, it can be hacked. Documents,
except for voting machines. Voting machines are inherently safe no matter what. Keep going.
But what if they're connected to the internet? All right. Let's move on. We've hammered that one before. But she was putting something that was connected to the internet.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. At any point, if anybody knew how to access it, they could.
Not just that, she's faxing herself stuff in her secure office and telling her cleaning lady, "Hey, can you go in there and just grab these classified documents off the fax tray?" I mean, that's take out all the technical aspects of it. She asked her cleaning lady to retrieve classified documents. That's a felony.
I mean, those are real charges that could be brought, that could be proven.
But no reasonable prosecutor would bring such a case, Josh, because everyone knows.
Define reasonable when they're a bunch of libs.
No, James Comey's a Republican, remember? He's a Republican.
Not. That's
what he says. I'm a Republican.
Yeah.
Look at me. I only prosecute Republicans, but I'm a Republican.
It's that classic meme. Oh, no one.
Yeah.
What? I wouldn't do that. It's unbelievable, man. What reason? Like that statement alone boiled my blood when I heard it. I mean, just boiled us. We were just like, "What is going on?" Like you have real punishable crimes. Like, and if the Department of Justice was actually interested in going after Dems, why wouldn't they be looking hard at Hunter or Joe?
Yeah,
right.
And every crime that Trump has been charged with isn't like an obvious thing. It's all these prosecutors and DA and special counsel stretching the definition of what usually is considered a crime, right? It's like, imagine them storming into a president's house. He's at his desk writing his memoirs and throwing him in handcuffs because he has government documents that he's looking at. An ex-president.
They all do. Go back to Carter and earlier, and you're going to find them everywhere. And Nixon. I mean,
well, let's not use Nixon as an example.
Let's not use it. But he might have kept a few things he shouldn't have. And I lost my point on the laugh because it was just what I'm just stuck on this, Max. It's like who's running the FBI?
So obvious.
Who's running the DOJ then? Who's running?
It's just so obvious. It's so obvious. And the usual measure for when something is unethical is it doesn't have to be proven that there is someone pulling a lever, putting their finger on the scale, right? You don't actually have to prove real impropriety. You just have to reasonably be able to say they've created the appearance of impropriety. So that's the standard for shutting things like this down, because the American people deserve to have trust in these institutions. The left talks about them all the time. Republicans want to destroy institutions. I have clips of Joe Biden accusing us, people like us, of wanting to destroy institutions. But meanwhile, they have weaponized institutions to the point where no conservatives anymore have any trust in them. Like, does anyone actually trust that the FBI is going to be politically neutral in prosecuting people? Just look at what's happening to Mike Lindell. He's declaring bankruptcy, apparently, and he's being audited by the IRS, and he was raided by feds when he was in line for, it was like Arby's or something.
Hardee's or something.
Hardee's, and they stole his phone. And it's just so very obvious. This is not politically neutral. They didn't go after the MyPillow guy because he was the biggest crime kingpin on their list. These are the same people that say prosecutorial discretion should guide immigration prosecutions, and we should only really prosecute the very bad criminals. And yet the MyPillow guy jumps the line at the same time that Hunter Biden gets the pass. And the Hunter Biden stuff, what's really interesting is it's not just what he's charged with. It's what we learned about his behaviors. They were trying to investigate and prosecute him for transporting prostitutes across state lines, like a human trafficking kind of charge. And they were shot down by the political appointees. No, you can't charge the president's son with human trafficking crimes because he brought someone across state lines for the purpose of paying them for sex. That's a very big federal crime. That got swept under the rug.
It just disappears. It was almost laughed at.
Yeah.
They were making jokes of it. So that puts us all in agave group. So what does that mean? Do they start tapping our lines? Do they start listening to our phone calls? Do they start watching outside? Or are they trying to figure out where our cars are going? What is this? What powers does this give them? Right? What sort of surveillance can they put on all of us just because we fit this narrative of a terrorist group? Right, that they can then use all the tools and powers of surveillance to go after. Well, that feels like a dangerous,
it is
dystopian world, right?
It is. When they passed the Patriot Act originally, we all thought, they're going to use this against Arabs and Middle Eastern terrorists. No, the Patriot Act is being used against patriots. Surprise,
right?
And we've also seen with these different FISA warrants and things like that. If they get a warrant for one person, they can do a certain number of jumps, a certain number of degrees of separation away. So if they have a FISA warrant against one person, they can actually listen to the conversations of other people 1, 2, or 3 jumps away, depending on the severity of that warrant. So they don't even need to get a warrant for everyone. And even in a world where they're listening in and they really shouldn't be, what we've seen from other reporting is that they launder that information. If they've heard something about you or me that might be worthy of investigation, but they really shouldn't have been listening, they'll give that information to the FBI and they'll find another way to get a search warrant. Right? And that's that's the terrible part about this. The agave bit, that is targeting people, not targeting crimes. When you're labeled as agave, and because remember, there were just Christian nuns that fall under this, right? Catholic nuns that fall under this. Catholic father was raided by the FBI under an agave kind of thing. They're not targeting crimes. They're targeting the people. And Josh, I can comfortably say that if the FBI looks at anyone for long enough, they'll find something that could reasonably be argued was a crime.
Yeah, that's how the system's built. I mean, as soon as they can turn those weapons on you, they find a reason to prosecute you. And once they have a reason to prosecute you, they can fear you into anything, right? I mean, it's the pressure of the law as a big thumb to push down on you to make things happen, to change the way you do it. And let's not forget, this is also the same group of people that wanted to control social media and control your speech about these things on top of it, right? So not only going after you personally, they go after the way that you communicate with others, and they'll use that to change opinions of you. You lose jobs. They'll get you canceled, right? I mean, this is totalitarian, Max. This is like it's all people say it'll never reach that point, but it already has, right? We're already there. They are going after people who are their political opponents. They're going after the rank and file voter. Like, you have to accept the choices they're giving you, right? And if you have to accept the choice, you're not. There's no real choice.
No, there's no real choice. And right after this Newsweek story dropped, Hillary Clinton gave an interview where she very comfortably called for people like you and me, MAGA voters, which, let's be very clear, those are just the 40+% Americans who vote for Donald Trump, deserve to be re-educated, which history tells us usually includes like concentration camps and like torture. Let's play the clip. I got it right here of Hillary Clinton saying that we all need to be re-educated.
Strong partisans in both parties in the past, and we had very bitter battles over all kinds of things, gun control and climate change and the economy and taxes. But there wasn't this little tail of extremism wagging the dog of the Republican Party as it is today. And sadly, so many of those extremists, those MAGA extremists, take their marching orders from Donald Trump, who has no credibility left by any measure. He's only in it for himself. He's now defending himself in civil actions and criminal actions. And when do they break with him? because at some point, maybe there needs to be a formal deprogramming of the cult members, but something needs to happen. And how do you
formal deprogramming of the cult members? This is coming from a woman whose husband was aboard Epstein flights. We are the ones who are the cults, apparently, and we are the ones who need to be deprogrammed. You know that Jeffrey Epstein, when you walked into his house, had a painting of Bill Clinton wearing a Monica Lewinsky dress. You know that, right?
Yeah, and he had a yeah, he did.
And you know why he has that. You know why he has that, right?
No. Enlighten me.
Everyone who walks into his house, including the Clintons, gets to see that and know that Epstein has power over Bill Clinton. How do you have a relationship with another man, like a friendly relationship, and have that on the wall? Josh, if you had a picture of me like that on your wall, I wouldn't be friends with you. And I assume, likewise, you wouldn't be friends with me if I did the same to you. Ooh. That shows you have power over someone. And it shows everyone else you're not afraid of the Clintons, even if everyone else should be. You're not afraid of the Clintons. You've got the receipts that could throw them in prison for a long time too. And I'm going to put this on the wall just so everyone sees that I've made Bill Clinton my little bitch, and he doesn't control me, and I'm not afraid of him. You all can be afraid that you're going to get killed if you go against the Clintons, but not me. Oh no, I got the receipts. That's why he has that on the wall. Ooh. So when Hillary Clinton says that we need to be deprogrammed, when her husband's flying on the Lolita Express, and we know all the cult-like things that allegedly happened on Epstein Island, it's very fresh. It's very rich, right? And this isn't the first time, though. Like, remember Joe Biden's evil red speech? Where he said he was going to bring the country... Yeah, pedo Hitler. He looked like he was going to... He said, I'm going to bring the people together. Let's just listen to a little clip of this.
President. Not a president of red America, blue America, but of all America. And I believe it's my duty to level with you, to tell the truth, no matter how difficult, no matter how painful. And here, in my view, is what is true. MAGA Republicans do not respect the Constitution. They do not believe in the rule of law. They do not recognize the will of the people. They refuse to accept the results of a free election. And they're working right now, as I speak, in state after state, to give power to decide elections in America to partisans and cronies, empowering election deniers to undermine democracy itself. MAGA forces are determined to take this country backwards to an America where there is no right to choose, no right to privacy, no right to contraception, no right to...
I'm cutting off there.
Yeah.
Because he's not actually listing rights.
No.
We don't respect the Constitution, Josh, even though we are the ones arguing in court and winning in court, right? I mean, conservatives are the only ones who care about the Constitution. Liberals look at it and they're more ends justify the means. Like, this is good. This is good. The Constitution's in the way. Let's massage this language and find a way to argue that it should be our way. The language there isn't even the worst language from him. There's another video I want to play real quickly of him where he is quite literally, I had to go through some of my old books from college and grad school to just make sure I wasn't just like imagining things. He's quite literally using the language that a despot, a dictator, authoritarian would use to rile up one side of the country to murder and kill the other side. Like when you look at the language, the rhetoric that was like in the lead up to the Rwandan genocide or the lead up to the Holocaust or the Armenian genocide, all of that rhetoric is just that they can't be here because their very presence is a threat to our existence, that they don't have the same values as us. They don't have the same norms as us. They don't pray to the same God as us. They just don't fit. It's us and them, and it can never be we. They will never be part of us. And I want to play this speech because just think about all of that rhetoric that historically has been used to launch genocides and ethnic cleansing, and listen to what Biden's saying.
And there's something dangerous happening in America now. There's an extremist movement that does not share the basic beliefs in our democracy. The MAGA movement. Not every Republican, not even a majority of Republicans adhere to the MAGA extremist ideology. I know because I've been able to work with Republicans my whole career. But there's no question that today's Republican Party is driven and intimidated by MAGA Republican extremists. Their extreme agenda, if carried out, would fundamentally alter the institutions of American democracy as we know it.
Yeah.
My friends, they're not hiding their attacks. They're openly promoting them, attacking the free press as the enemy of the people, attacking the rule of law as an impediment, fomenting voter suppression and election subversion. Did you ever think we'd be having debates at your stage of your careers where banning books and burying history? Extremists in Congress more determined to shut down the government, to burn the place down, than to let the people's business be done. Our U.S. military, and this is not hyperbole, I've said it for the last 2 years, is the strongest military in the history of the world. Not just the strongest in the world, in the history of the world. The most diverse, the most powerful in the history of the world. And it's being accused of being weak and woke by the opposition. One guy in Alabama is holding up the promotion of every hundreds of these officers. Frankly, these extremists have no idea what the hell they're talking about.
So you listen to that, Josh, and the only thing missing for this to be a historical, nonfiction documentary is these people don't have the same values as us. They're a threat to our democratic institutions. Grab your machetes and cut them to bits.
Mm-hmm.
That language has traditionally been followed up by calls to violence.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not making this up. You
No.
go through and look through history of ethnic cleansing, crimes against humanity, genocide. This is the kind of language that telling you that your neighbor, it doesn't matter if you smile and wave at your neighbor's a MAGA Republican extremist, and he's a threat. He's an existential threat. To call something an existential threat is to argue that their mere presence in society is a threat to your existence.
Mm.
You can only call someone a Nazi so long before people start thinking, oh, I got to kill the Nazis. We all think about it. What would we do if we had a time machine? Would we kill baby Hitler? Right? I mean, that's a great philosophical question. Would you kill Hitler if you had a chance, knowing everything he's done? Well, fast forward now. If everyone on your political side of the aisle is calling someone a Nazi, how could you not? How could you not take the shot? How could you not try and take them out?
It'd be your responsibility.
He's literally Hitler.
Yeah. I mean, you're right. They're just one statement away. And it doesn't have to be from the leaders in politics. Remember, the calls for the violence start coming down from the lowers, right?
Yeah.
And then the system just feeds itself with promoting the idea of destroying your opponents physically now. Yeah, we're one paragraph away from that being the case. And here's the thing about it all, Max, is when everything he says about MAGA Republicans is opinion that he's putting out as fact. And when you put opinion out as fact, you're a liar. You just are, because that's opinion, right? And then when you try to take those facts based on your opinion and put them out there as the truth, that makes you a fraud.
Yeah.
So he is a liar and he is a fraud. And none of this is true. But people are eating it up. They're eating up lies and they're eating up the fraud.
I wanted to show something because just to see how ridiculous this all is. Right? Joe Biden saying, oh, they're MAGA extremists. They're a threat to your very democratic institutions. You know, Jamal Brown, the congressman who pulled that fire alarm thinking it was a door unlock button.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Well, his office had a memo circulating talking points for how their allies in the media could respond in a way that would help Jamal Bowman not go to prison for laughably committing the same crime that many January 6th protesters went to prison for, which is disrupting an official congressional function, right? Pulling fire alarm disrupts the function. Everyone stops doing what they're doing. I wanted to call attention just to some of these suggested talking points. Quote, it is an extreme reach on the part of MAGA Republicans to assert that Representative Bowman intended to harm or destruct anyone or thing. The exact opposite is true. He was trying to do his job.
Good Lord. They're listing it by...
Right here. I believe Congressman Bowman when he says this was an accident. Republicans need to instead focus their energy on the Nazi members of their party before anything else. This is how this narrative has just infected the Democrat Party. This guy commits a crime on camera, pulling a fire alarm. He's not an idiot. You don't pull a fire alarm to open a door. If you see a door that says labeled, the alarm will go off if you use this door, you don't use the door. I mean, am I missing something? But no, to defend this obvious lawlessness, their recommended talking points is to accuse the Republicans of being Nazis.
Not only that, but the actions of MAGA Republicans force me to commit crimes now. You are the reason I commit crimes. On top of that, right?
Yeah.
This whole statement is defining you and saying that what I did is your fault, even though I'm the one that committed the crime. I mean, that right there, that's how genocides start, especially the Uganda genocide. That was essentially what the two sides went after each other over, right? You do not belong here. You were the cause of all these horrible things. That's it in a nutshell. That was horrible for those who've not looked into it. But that's what they're calling for. At what point will the active calls to violence start?
Well, here's the thing. You don't need neighbor fighting neighbor if the FBI does it for you. Why? Like, think about it. Why would you foment violence and get your Democrat allies to storm someone's house and kill them when you can get the FBI to do a no-knock raid, bust in their door, and drag them out in handcuffs in their underwear? I mean, like, that's what's happening. There's no need to go the extra step because the state is being weaponized. The state is being weaponized to do the job that other despots have relied on their own radical supporters to do.
Mm-hmm. Good Lord.
So, and here's the thing. The very people who shout never again, we'll never let this happen again, we'll never allow government to have this authoritarian control and be targeting people like the genocide and whatnot, they're clapping like a seal. Mm-hmm. Oh, you're arresting our enemies for what? Oh, they had a social media post? Oh, it was a joke? Oh, throw them in prison for the rest of their life.
Let's celebrate.
Yeah.
They celebrate it. They're celebrating it.
It's sad.
Disgusting. It's not sad. It's disgusting. I mean, it's an all-out war that they're already conducting, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to use that word just because you don't know who's listening now. Imagine all the fear. Like, you'd be afraid to fight back because you'd never know what's around the corner now. And that's what they want. So much fear.
Yeah. And Hillary Clinton in that interview, she's like, we used to have these little tussles over things like gun control. No, you used to try and violate the Constitution to disarm us so that the government would have a monopoly on the use of force. Mm-hmm. These aren't little tussles, right? Their gun control agenda was to disarm all of us. We played this on the other show with Dianne Feinstein. She said, if I could have done it, I would have. Mr. and Mrs. America, turned them all in, but I didn't have the votes. Now, Hillary Clinton is saying, oh, well, that was just little tussles here and there over just minor things like disarming everyone. Minor things like let's kill all the babies before they're born. Minor things. Josh, minor. Little disagreements. We can laugh. We can laugh over that, right? But now today, you can't even kill an unborn baby anymore, Josh. You can't even disarm everyone anymore, Josh, without the MAGA extremists fighting back.
I mean, I just wanted full-size magazines in my state, and I'm a terrorist.
I know.
I want to be able to. I would love to have short-barreled rifles. I would love to have short things of anything, right? But the ATF says no. Right?
Yeah.
I would like to have lots of stuff, but I just apparently can't be trusted with them.
Can't be trusted. Only the government. Only the government
can
be trusted. Even though law-abiding concealed carry permit holders commit fewer crimes than police officers.
Yeah.
We can't be trusted.
Right.
We can't be trusted.
Didn't they lose like an F-35 or something like that? And
no, they found it. They found it.
Okay, well, I mean, they lose one. It's out of control. It's no big deal. But if my suppressor was to fall out of my hands and it was gone for a little while and it was never found, well, that'd be crime.
Oh, not just that. Not just that. You have someone come to take care of your cat while you're away, and your safe is left slightly ajar.
Oh.
The minute they walk into your house, they are in possession of that suppressor, right? I mean,
right. And that's the mental gymnastics on it, right? Everything's a crime. Like, they've made every right that we've had a crime in some way to be punishable, right? And that's to put us, or at least their political opponents, in prison, which will be prison camps. Like the prisons will be the prison camps. They won't be building them in these areas outside large airports and stuff like that. No, they're already there, and they're filling them up, and they're getting them bigger, and they're just going to start exchanging the violent criminals that are in there with their political opponents.
And our, God forbid it ever comes to this, our accommodations will not be one Patriot Place at the Hyatt overlooking Gillette Stadium, taxpayer paid for. No, that's not going to be what we get.
No.
Right now, we're not going to get that. We're not even going to get as nice as illegal aliens now get. Have you ever seen the digs? The new migrant processing center that they're building?
No, I kind of want to see that now. I mean, is it beautiful? Is there free water and there's snacks?
It looks like, in fairness, it looks like a
daycare.
No, not daycare. It looks like a like a county college, right? Like a community college.
That's an interesting layout.
And it's like all open. Let me see if I can find it.
Really nice. People can talk to each other.
I put it in my book, but I don't remember the exact
resources.
name of it.
It's crazy. I mean, why would you want to put these centers where you process people to look like colleges? I mean,
yeah.
It's like, well, they're there to learn and indoctrinate.
Yeah, and one guy escaped from it. Because there's really no guards, and they just gave up looking for him because he was just going to be released into the interior the next day anyway. So, like, why care?
Why care?
Why send out the bloodhounds if he was 12 hours away from being put on a Greyhound anywhere he wanted to go anyway? Like, what's the point?
Right. I mean, he could have been a terrorist, but we don't know. Yeah. We don't know. We didn't ask.
I'll see if I can pull that image for next time. I don't remember the exact name of it.
HIV and probably some form of tuberculosis that we haven't seen here.
Who knows?
So there are a bunch of diseases that are starting to creep their way into cities now that have not been there before. And that's what happens when you have the groups come in, right? The biggest thing that killed the Native Americans was all the smallpox before most people even showed up, right? I mean, it's
going to
happen.
This is the thing. Like, I personally have a vaccine injury from a tetanus shot. It gave me a really bad rash all over my elbows and feet and knees. So I don't take the tetanus shot anymore. But so I understand people who don't like certain vaccines. I get that. There's no doubt in my mind, though, that we have had vaccines in this country that have eliminated diseases in this country.
You bet. Sure.
We can talk about the is it better than the negatives? Do the pluses outweigh the negatives? That's a very fair discussion. But there are vaccines that have eliminated diseases to the point where we don't even vaccinate for them anymore because we assume it's not going to be here anymore. Like, the average child doesn't get like a polio vaccine unless you really need it, because we look around, there's really no one with polio in the United States, so there's no real chance of getting it unless you were to travel or things like that. We are now seeing these diseases that we have eradicated coming back. And it is not because of vaccine hesitancy, what they call vaccine hesitancy in the United States, is because we are literally importing people into this country with those diseases. And these vaccines are never 100%. So, like, if a vaccine protects against an illness, maybe it's 80% effective, right? So you're relying on the fact that no one has this disease for it to be effective. But the minute you introduce one person with the disease into a room of 100 people, 20 of them get it, even if they're all vaccinated. And then they go into another room with 100 people, and 20 of those people get it. So you can see how tuberculosis, not tuberculosis, but lots of these different diseases can really spread out of control in colleges, especially, even if everyone's vaccinated. And then you have the people who are there with immunodeficiencies who are relying on that herd immunity to not get sick themselves. They get the disease, they could die. And no, we are.
One final point there. They spent all this time telling us we have to vaccinate and make sure we're prepared for COVID-19, but they ignore every other single disease that comes over that border with them.
They are putting illegal alien kids into public schools without requiring any proof of vaccination. Josh, you haven't put kids through school, but you probably remember from when you were a kid. I can't even get my kid into the room for orientation without proving his vaccine history. But the migrants can run right in.
Whose country is it, Max?
Yeah, whose country is it?
Whose country is it?
Be careful. That sounds like agave talk.
Whoa, I know I gotta be careful.
That sounds like agave.
It does. I'm just...
That sounds like a little bit of spicy mezcal.
Don't get me started.
You know what, Josh?
What?
You're the worm at the bottom of the bottle.
No,
that's how agave you are.
Nobody likes to eat the worm at the bottom.
I do.
Oh, so gross but hilarious all at the same time. But
that means you've drank the whole bottle. I like it.
Whatever.
That's how agave Josh is. He's the little worm.
I was going to come up with some sort of insult for you, but then
the worm's good.
I don't know.
Do you know why they do the worm?
No.
So the worm. No clue. So with when you're making tequila, some cacti will produce alcohol, some will not, and some are dangerous to drink. So they use the worm. If the worm dies in the alcohol, it's alcohol, right? If the worm is put in and it doesn't die, then it's water and it could have something bad in it because it's a non-alcohol producing cactus.
See, that makes a lot of sense. It's how you do it back in the day, right? It's like proofing. You prove it had alcohol. There you go.
Shake it.
Worm's dead. Let's drink.
Yeah. But now it's just for people like us to enjoy it.
So gross. Good show, but remember,
good show.
It kills me that they're willing to sell everything we have down the road. Just like, I'm a terrorist now, Max. You're a terrorist. You're a terrorist.
But the people literally storming the borders, carrying the flags of their home country as if they are a conquering hero, they get the welcome mat. Did you see that? Do you see the Venezuelan flag went up on Texas soil? Do you see that when it happened a couple days ago? It's madness. Well, that's going to be it for this edition of the podcast. If you like the podcast, subscribe. Rumble, YouTube, subscribe. If you like it and you want to listen as you're driving, subscribe to the audio edition. It's available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, TuneIn, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Audible, or Podbean. Those links are in that description. We go live Wednesday and Friday at 4 p.m. Eastern. So make sure you tune in for that. And check out the other links if you want to help support the show. There's a couple ways down there that you can do that. That's it for this edition. My name is Max McGuire.
I'm Josh Hammerling.
Remember, the fight to take back the country, as we just covered, is not over. But the only way we win is if we all step and fight together. Have a great weekend.
See you guys.